A third semester MBBS student was recently placed in OPD. Consultants auscultating at 4 areas on the chest beat any cardiac patient. After this experience, he had certain questions in his mind. Did you notice? Why is it so? Does it happen in real life? How can I use that? A very good afternoon to everyone present over here. I feel honored to have an opportunity to speak in front of such a great audience. I, Arnav Tiwari, a third semester MBBS student of AIIMS Rishikesh, am here to give a short talk on a vast topic, experiential learning. First, let's understand what is experiential learning. Experiential, to acquire, understand what is experiential learning. Experiential, to acquire with aid of experience. Learning, it is the act of acquiring or modifying the existing knowledge, skill, or behavior which may lead to synthesis of knowledge, lead to synthesis of new information. Experiential learning is a methodology of a philosophy of experiential education which can be utilized to educate a group, an individual, or a pair. Experiential learning was described in a cycle by the philosopher David Cope. The first concrete experience is the first physical experience of a situation by the learner. This may or may not have a pre-existing knowledge behind it. When detached from the experience, there occurs a phase of reflective observation, where the learner reflects upon his observation, reflects upon his experience and observes what the experience was all about. Following reflective observation, there occurs a phase of conceptualization, where the learner makes a concept on the basis of his pre-existing knowledge and the observations made during the learning cycle. This concept is proved by active experimentation, if ever the chance comes to the learner. If the concept is proved by his experiment, the knowledge remains with the learner for a long time. Experiential learning may or may not be requiring a facilitator. The facilitator may enhance the form of experience, but it is not necessary for this form of learning. There are some prerequisites for this experiential learning. The learner must be willing to get actively involved in the experience. He must be able to reflect on the experience. The learner must possess and use the analytical skills to conceptualize his experience. The learner must have decision-making and problem-solving skills to generate new ideas during the experience. A very interesting point about experiential learning. Though many philosophers think it to be a cycle, I personally feel that this form of learning is a spiral. The experience, followed by observation, generalization, and application, leads to generation of more knowledge. And what this knowledge does is that it changes the person. Now the new experience encountered by the learner would be a step ahead from the previous one, and thus will lead to formation of a spiral. I would like to share some instances from my life where I used experiential learning. When I was 5, I visited a zoo for the first time. I saw the elephant giving a blow to a man. I observed that it can harm any of us. I made a concept that elephants are ferocious. The next time, when I was near a caged elephant, I tried to give it a banana. It took the banana, and by his trunk, he gave me a blow. I was on the ground, and from then, the most fearful animal I've ever been near to is the elephant. When I was learning to ride the bike, another instance, when I was learning to ride the bike, I knew where was the accelerator, where was the clutch, and I knew everything about it. It was my first direct physical experience with the bike. But within a few moments, I was on the ground. And there, I observed that until and unless my speed was under my control, I did not fall. I observed, and then I made a concept to keep the speed under my control, especially on the turns. And there I learned how to take a smooth turn, and by spirals of this experiential learning, today I can ride a bike very well. In DH, we had many experiential learning cycles over there. One of them, special one, I learned that find dissection was very essential for viewing certain structures. And it could be done by 2 methods. That was my experience. It could be done by 2 methods. Either I use a pair of scissors or I use a fine forceps. I observed both of them because I had two professors, very different. One used the fine forceps, other used a scissors, pair of scissors for dissection. I made a concept to use both of them simultaneously, or I use one of them. I experimented on it. And then I found that using scissors for fine dissection was much more handy for me. On the same time, my colleague, she used to dissect on the other side of the body and she used a fine forceps and she was equally well. This shows that experiential learning provides a room, a zone for comfort education. The knowledge generated may be different, the skill may be different, the behavior may be different, but that difference comes because of difference in interest or intellectual habits of that learner. Another instance where I will show where lack of experimentation could be a flaw of this. Though I go with a preference, I'll tell you. I was in the medicine OPD, that was my first posting. I saw my consultant. He was testing the motor function of three nerves, median, ulnar and radial. The patient to do just a simple action. He asked the patient to do like this, do this. I observed. I thought, wow, what simple thing we can do to test all the motor function of three nerves. I made a concept that this simple action can save the time and can test the motor functions too. But still, the learning is not over. Because the next time, when I read physical examination, I'll go and actively experiment on this particular concept on a patient. And there my learning cycle would get completed if my concept gets to prove. The career of a successful medical professional comprises of a series of experiential learning skills. With every experience, a consultant asks himself, what I have done wrong? How can I improve? How can I make the patient understand? And with every new experience, the whole cycle goes as a spiral for a medical learner. And what new knowledge is generated is more refined. Though medical line in the medical education, medical learning system, experiential learning plays a very important role and it's a very powerful tool. But for formation of a concept, the pre-existing knowledge is very much required. And for this pre-existing knowledge, a bit of didactic form of learning is required. So better integration of experiential and didactic learning form together would lead to some new form of learning model, which would lead to refined form of learning for the education. With this concluding note, I open the stage for questions.
Thank you very much, Arnav, for your presentation, which has been very well received, and we would like to compliment you on the observations that you have made, and some of them are based on your personal experience. Well, the personal experience makes some people learn, but there are a whole lot of us who don't learn from the experience that they have had on more than one occasion. And what is the reason behind it? Everybody looks at the patient, uses the eyes, but some people, some students make observations which are quite extraordinary, very useful in clinical practice, whereas there are others who are also looking at the patient but fail to the patient. It starts with inspection. And there is so much of difference. Why somebody notices a certain feature and there's another student who doesn't. And as you rightly said, this difference in learning by experience comes from the background knowledge. You have to have some sort of knowledge as to what you should be looking for, because unless you know what you're looking for, you will not learn. I compliment you once again for this nice presentation. I don't think there are going to be any questions, or there are some students, I think, who would like to question you on what you have presented. Are there any questions, please? Yes, okay. If there are any questions for the previous speaker also, please feel free to raise your hand and make your comments or observations.
Hi Arnav. Actually sir, this is not a caution. This is the third thing which I want to add with this, with experiential learning, with didactic learning, and there's one thing which we all need, that is like personal learning, to learn about yourself. As you rightly said, some people learn from experiences and some doesn't learn from them. It is a personal thing which makes them different. We all are different and we have to learn from our experiences. And then only with combination of experiential learning and didactic learning, we can complete this. So with all these things, didactic learning and experiential learning, they should at least one class, if it can make some difference, about learning yourself, about learning your behavior, about learn first to observe yourself. Then only we can observe another. So that's all.
What is your name?
So, Deeksha.
And you are a student here? And
Yes, sir. I'm from the same batch, third
same
semester.
batch, okay. That is third batch?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Anybody else wants to make any comments?